Most men don't lose interest in sex because they've become broken. They lose interest because they've become aware. They start to see through it, the illusion, the trap, the biological puppet strings pulling them toward something that no longer feels worth the cost. Arthur Schopenhauer said it best. The sexual instinct is the most deceitful of all the instincts. It promises heaven, but delivers repetition and disillusion. It promises ecstasy, connection, power. But after enough time, enough encounters, enough disappointment, it starts to feel hollow. That's when something in the man's mind shifts. Not because his body can't respond, but because his spirit no longer wants to. Sex as nature's trick. Schopenhauer believed that sex is not about love. It's not about fulfillment. It's not even about pleasure. It's nature's most clever illusion. A trick played by the species to ensure reproduction while convincing the individual he's chasing happiness. You feel desire. You think it's for beauty, for connection, for validation. But at the most primal level, you're being manipulated by biology. What you think is your choice is nature's command. And for a time, that lie works. Men devote their lives to chasing it, building status, money, confidence, just to get access to the illusion. But eventually, some men wake up. They see the pattern. They start to notice how fleeting the pleasure is and how much it costs them. The cycle of empty highs. At first, every sexual experience feels meaningful. It carries the thrill of validation, the rush of newness, the illusion of conquest. But repeat the experience enough, and you begin to notice the truth. It's the same script every time. The chase, the buildup, the peak, the release, the letdown. It's not that men stop wanting sex, it's that they grow tired of the cycle. And the worst part? Every time they give in, they reinforce the lie that it will feel different this time, that this partner will satisfy the soul, that this moment will mean something, that this connection will last. But it rarely does, and each new disappointment chips away at the desire itself, from craving to apathy. When desire is unmet, it burns. When it's satisfied too often, it numbs. This is the paradox that leads to sexual apathy. A man who has never had enough will chase it endlessly, believing the next woman holds the cure. But a man who's had too much, he starts to see the pattern as repetitive, even degrading. He sees through the costumes, the forced performances, the emptiness behind the eyes. And suddenly, sex feels less like a fire to be fed, and more like a cheap drug he's tired of taking. This doesn't mean he's become cold. It means he's begun to value truth more than stimulation. The painful realization. This moment doesn't always come with clarity. It creeps in slowly. He'll go home from a hookup and feel nothing. He'll scroll through pictures of beautiful women and feel numb. He'll watch what once aroused him and feel disgust. He starts to ask dangerous questions. What am I doing this for? Why does this feel meaningless? Who have I become? And the answer is brutal. He's become a man who's finally outgrown the lie. Not because he's better than it, but because it no longer offers what his deeper self truly needs. Schopenhauer didn't see this as weakness. He saw it as awakening, a moment when the veil lifts, and a man sees sex not as fulfillment, but as biological theater. Arthur Schopenhauer didn't romanticize sex. He dismantled it ruthlessly. To him, romantic love was never about connection. It was nature's most powerful illusion, designed to make men sacrifice reason, freedom, and even their lives, all to satisfy reproduction's cold logic. In his words, love is the ultimate delusion by which nature dupes the individual into serving the species. Think about that. All the passion, all the longing, all the emotional highs and lows. It's not about you, it's about genes. From Schopenhauer's perspective, when a man falls in love, he's not fallen into intimacy. He's fallen into a biological trap, one where nature doesn't care if he ends up broken, drained, or alone. woman as nature's agent. Schopenhauer also wrote, controversially, that women serve as agents of the species. This wasn't meant as an insult, but as a brutal observation. In his framework, the female role in reproduction gives her a kind of unconscious power. She doesn't pursue sex for pleasure or connection the same way as men do, but as a strategic tool to secure resources, protection, and the strongest possible offspring. This isn't about modern morality. It's about instinct. He believed that even when she seems romantic, soft, or affectionate, she's still operating beneath awareness on biological programming. That's why, in his view, men feel used after sex far more often than women do. Because the man, thinking he was sharing something sacred, may come to realize he was simply being selected. Why the disillusionment hits hard. When a man begins to understand this, truly understand it, his entire romantic worldview starts to crack. He might recall times when he was used, misled, or emotionally manipulated. He remembers how much effort he invested, time, money, emotion, for something that felt meaningful in the moment, but ended up being transactional. The heartbreak he experienced, not just emotional loss, it was existential betrayal, because it wasn't just the woman who failed him. It was the lie he believed, the lie that sex is love, that beauty means goodness, that attraction equals value. And when that lie dies, something inside him dies with it, from worship to withdrawal. This is the origin of what many call emotional detachment in men. But it's not always a defense. Sometimes it's a revelation. He stops chasing, not because he can't win, but because he finally understands the game. He realizes that the intense desire he once felt was never truly his own. It was planted in him by biology, inflamed by society, and packaged as love. And once that veil lifts, it doesn't return. What once thrilled him now bores him. What once intoxicated him now irritates him. What once felt magical now seems mechanical. The tragic cost of awakening. But here's the catch. This kind of awakening is lonely. When a man loses interest in sex, when he sees through the illusion, he often finds himself in a kind of psychological exile. He can't go back to casual hookup culture. He no longer believes in fairy tale romance, but he hasn't yet found a deeper form of connection to replace what he's lost. He stands between two worlds, the old world of animal instinct and romantic fantasy, and the new world of clarity, restraint, and solitude. And in that space he grieves, not just for the love he never really had, but for the man he used to be, naive, hopeful, willing to believe. Schopenhauer understood this grief. He believed that wisdom, by nature, isolates, that to see clearly is to suffer differently, and to desire less but more truthfully. Once the illusion of sex collapses, most men don't feel liberated. They feel lost. For so long, chasing women, chasing beauty, chasing validation was the core of their identity, the purpose behind the gym sessions, the career goals, the self-improvement. Without it, there's a silence. It's not peace at first. It's a haunting emptiness, like walking off a stage and realizing there's no audience, no spotlight, no applause. The game is over, and he doesn't know who he is without it. The masculine crisis of meaning. Schopenhauer once wrote that most human suffering comes not from pain, but from boredom. And for the disillusioned man, this becomes brutally real. Because once sex loses its grip on the mind, something unexpected happens. Porn becomes boring. Hookups feel robotic. Flirting seems juvenile. Even relationships begin to feel hollow. Why? Because they were never truly about her. They were about him, trying to fill a void. But when the void becomes visible, the mask falls off. And without the distraction of desire, he's forced to confront the deeper question. What is my life for, now that pleasure no longer drives me? From dopamine to depth, This moment marks a shift from dopamine to depth, from chasing highs to facing truth, but it's a painful bridge to cross. Many men, unable to bear that silence, relapse back into mindless indulgence, back into toxic relationships, back into performance mode, anything to avoid the confrontation with the deeper self. Schopenhauer saw this as the core tragedy of human life, our addiction to illusion. He believed that most men would rather suffer predictably than face the terror of inner silence. But for those who are brave enough, something powerful happens. They stay in the void. They resist the urge to numb. They walk through the emptiness. And on the other side, they discover something deeper, a version of masculinity not built on conquest, but on clarity, the emergence of inner strength. Without sex as motivation, many men fear they'll become apathetic. But what often emerges instead is power, real power. No longer chasing approval, he becomes grounded in self-respect. No longer needing validation, he becomes immune to manipulation. No longer ruled by lust, he becomes master of his mind. This man doesn't hate women. He doesn't fear intimacy. He simply refuses to trade his peace for momentary pleasure. He sees sex as what it is, a biological act that can be either sacred or soulless, depending on the awareness behind it. And if it's not aligned with something deeper, he walks away without regret. The redefinition of love. But this awakening doesn't mean isolation forever. For some men, the rejection of shallow sex opens the door to real intimacy, not love based on chemistry, but love built on resonance, a quiet understanding between two people who don't need each other to feel whole, but choose to walk together anyway. This kind of connection isn't driven by hormones. It's driven by values, by aligned silence, by mutual respect. And in this rare space, sex regains its sacredness. It's no longer a transaction, it's an expression, not a performance, but a communion. From animal to architect, Schopenhauer believed that most people live as animals, driven by urges, reacting to desires. But the awakened man becomes something else, an architect. He no longer obeys every instinct, he questions them. He reclaims authorship over his time, energy, and emotional life. The man who once gave himself away for pleasure now guards his energy like gold. And in doing so, he discovers a rare kind of freedom. Not from women, not from sex, but from the unconscious need that once ruled him. Schopenhauer didn't just say that sex was overrated. He saw it as the ultimate enslavement, a chain that most men never notice until it's too late. They confuse it with freedom, with masculinity, with life. But in truth, most men are led by it. They shape their choices, values, and goals around the pursuit of pleasure. The right clothes, the right car, the gym membership, the lifestyle, not for peace, but for approval, not for purpose, but for attention. This isn't freedom. It's just a different form of control. And the terrifying truth? Many men only realize they were prisoners once they lose interest in the chase, the culture that feeds the lie. We live in a world where everything is sexualized. Every advertisement, every movie, every scroll, it keeps men locked into the belief that pleasure is the goal, that if they're not constantly craving it, something is wrong with them. But Schopenhauer would argue the opposite. He believed that true strength doesn't come from indulging in desire, but from transcending it. In fact, he saw pleasure not as fulfillment, but as the temporary absence of pain. That rush after sex? It's not bliss, it's just relief. A break from the craving that tortured you. But give it enough time, and the craving returns. So you chase again and again, until your life becomes one long loop of tension and release. Without depth, without direction. Masculinity without lust. This leads to one of the most misunderstood ideas in modern psychology. That if a man doesn't chase women, he must be broken. That if he's not obsessed with sex, he's weak, repressed, or failing as a man. But in truth, the opposite is often true. A man who no longer views sex as a goal is no longer controlled by the world. He's no longer baited by flattery, no longer driven by competition, no longer distracted by temporary highs. This doesn't mean he's ascetic or anti-sex. It means he chooses power over impulse. It means his energy is his own. And in Jungian terms, this man has begun the process of individuation, the reclaiming of self from the unconscious, the shift from appetite to awareness. What happens when a man stops chasing sex? First, he feels discomfort, then clarity, then sovereignty. He begins to see people as they are, not as objects of desire, but as mirrors, teachers, and sometimes illusions. He values solitude. He sharpens focus. He builds systems. His days are no longer built around cravings, but around creation. And the irony, women start to notice him more. Not because he's trying, but because he's no longer trapped in the same energetic loop as everyone else. He radiates independence, mystery, control, and in a world full of men seeking approval, he becomes a rare one. The man who doesn't need to be desired to feel complete. Spiritual mastery and the death of illusion. At its core, Schopenhauer's view of sexuality wasn't just cynical, it was spiritual. He saw the renunciation of sexual desire as the beginning of inner mastery. A man who could look temptation in the eye and say, "Number, I know what you are." Not from repression, but from wisdom. This man is no longer bound by fantasy, no longer at war with his instincts, because he understands them. He doesn't suppress his nature. He studies it, he refines it. He becomes the conductor, not the instrument. And in this state, sex becomes a choice, not a compulsion. A possibility, not a prison. When a man sheds the illusion of sex as the highest pleasure, what's left? This is the question that haunts many after awakening from the dream. Because what they once pursued with fire now feels cold. What once drove them now feels meaningless. But this emptiness is not the end. It's the beginning. A clean slate, an unclaimed life. In this void, a man must decide. Will he fall back into the old story? Or will he write a new one, redirecting the sexual energy? Schopenhauer believed that human energy is finite, and what we invest in sex is energy we take away from everything else. So when a man pulls back from the pursuit of lust, he doesn't become empty. He becomes charged. That same intensity that once drove him toward women can now fuel mastery, creation, philosophy, articled discipline, vision. This redirection is not repression, it's transformation. Jung called this the sublimation of instinct, when unconscious urges are raised to a higher level of meaning. And this is where men become dangerous in the best way, not because they conquer others, but because they've conquered themselves. The death of the addicted self. Most men who chase sex aren't chasing pleasure. They're chasing relief from shame, from self-doubt, from a lack of identity. Sex becomes a way to forget. But when you remove that escape route, the truth confronts you. I don't know who I am without this. This moment is painful. It's the death of the addicted self, but it's also the rebirth of the conscious one. And this new man doesn't need sex to feel powerful. He creates power from within. His self-worth is no longer borrowed from attention. It's built from presence, the sacred masculine. When Schopenhauer's brutal realism is filtered through modern insight, we find something deeper, that the loss of interest in sex doesn't signal weakness, it signals evolution. This man may still enjoy intimacy, but he doesn't need it. He may still love deeply, but he doesn't cling. He lives from essence, not ego. And when he gives himself to someone, it's not to complete himself, but to share his wholeness. This is the sacred masculine, grounded, clear, free. A man who chooses connection not from hunger, but from abundance, letting go of the fantasy. To reach this place, the man must do what most never will. He must grieve the fantasy that love would fix him, that pleasure would fulfill him. That desire was destiny. And in letting go, he doesn't become numb. He becomes real. He sees beauty without needing to possess it. He feels attraction without being enslaved by it. He experiences life without needing it to entertain him constantly. This is a quieter life, but it's stronger, it's slower, but it's more true. And from this place, he can finally ask, what does life want from me now that I am no longer distracted? The final liberation. Arthur Schopenhauer didn't offer comfort. He offered clarity. And while his words may seem cold to the romantic, to the man who's been burned by illusion, they feel like truth. Sex isn't the enemy, but the worship of it, the way it hijacks your mind, steals your time, and rewrites your values. That's the trap. And the man who sees through it, he's not broken, he's not bitter, he's free.